when we start a podcast, do we need to be the expert? And if we're not, it is the wrong thing for us to be able to call a podcast the podcast on podcasting, the marketing podcast, insights into success. If we're not perfect at that thing, if we're not the top guru, should it mean that we shouldn't even have the show at all?
Yeah, and that is just like one of the preeminent questions that needs to be addressed. It really is, and it's on everyone's minds, I'm sure, most people's minds. And this whole concept of imposter syndrome. Who am I to get up and to do a podcast? I mean, what do I know? There's bound to be people out there that know more than me. And I think any normal human being, balanced human being, is going to think those exact things, those exact thoughts. There wouldn't be too many that have such a high opinion of themselves that they go, well, it's obvious, I am the expert. You know, and I think it's a dangerous thing in life to ever think that you know everything. Life is an ongoing journey. It's an evolution. And if we took that approach that, well, I'm not really up to it, well, where would we be? And we just need to look at many, many examples in the world where we're talking sportsmen, you know, Michael Jordan or whoever. Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, they didn't get to be such outstanding athletes by just simply turning up. They got there by perfecting their craft, by doing it over and over again. But they started somewhere. They started at ground level and they built up from there. And this is no different. You know, Joe Rogan, when he started his podcast, I haven't seen them, but by all accounts, they were awful. Now he's making a fortune. And that's not to say that that should be the motivation either. I'm not getting into that, but just that you've got to start somewhere. And it's only by practicing that you get better at something. And I read a great book once, which I think it's called The Winner's Bible. And it talked about how, you know, in England, they found that there was a group of small villages in the UK where all the top table tennis players were coming out of. And they're like, why is this? Why are they all coming from these two villages? And what they found was there's a guy who's passionate about table tennis and lived in that community. And he was getting children sort of age 10 and younger practicing. So that by the time that they got to sort of age 13 and 14, they had been practicing for literally thousands of hours. And his point was, it isn't because they're naturally more gifted. It's because they practiced. They practice. And that one of the absolute keys to sporting success is that practicing. You look at the Williams sisters, Venus and that, they haven't got to get where they've got to by just rocking up. They did it because their dad got them into playing tennis at a very young age. And by the time they're age 10, 12, they had done thousands of hours that a lot of other kids hadn't done. And I see this as no different. You've got to start somewhere. Hey, look, you may not be brilliant on day one. Who is? But by practicing, you're going to get better. And the main thing is to be passionate about what you're doing. If you're doing it just for the sake of it, then you're probably going to burn out and it won't work. But if you love what you're doing, then that will drive you to succeed at it. I strongly believe that. And look, I'm not here saying I'm an expert. I'm still early in my journey of podcasting. So don't think that I'm claiming to be a guru, because I'm not. I'm speaking as I'm very much in the early stages of my journey. I've been doing this podcast for roughly about a year now. So, and fitting it in with everything else. So I certainly am not the expert, but I do strongly believe that it's only by practice. And hopefully, if you listen to my interviews, you'll find that I'm getting better. And the one thing I will say is it's a real challenge. It's not as easy as you might think to interview people. You know, I found what I'd do is I'd have my notes and I'd be all ready for the interview, I'd done all my research, and I'd even debrief them and talk basically about the structure of my interview. And we'd get in and I'd have question number one and ask the question number one. Next minute, they're answering questions 4 and 5. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't now go ask those questions because I've already answered them. I'm going to look like a complete twit. So I've now got to rejuggle. And obviously with practice, you get better at that. But in the beginning, it was like, wow, this isn't easy. So I've definitely got a lot more respect for others out there that do it from it. It's definitely a skill, but you only get better at it by practicing. So don't hold back. Honestly, when I look at so many things online talking about doing different things, there's the whole wait till you're perfect and start versus just get out there and do it. I'm very much in the just get out there and do it, because if you wait for 100%, you're going to probably never do it. And if you do, you might have missed your opportunity. So if you can get to kind of 80% when you start or something like that, go for it. And don't worry about the fact it's not perfect. But ultimately, the content, I believe content rules everything. So even if you're not the best at doing the interview, even if your camera work's not brilliant, even if your sound's not brilliant, if your content's good, I believe that will rule over everything else.